Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
The National Day of Prayer has been ruled constitutional. Hi, I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. Joining me is Matt Barber, who is associate dean of the law school and vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. And Matt, last year, federal judge Barber Crabb ruled that the National Day of Prayer was unconstitutional, saying that it goes beyond mere acknowledgement of religion and that its sole purpose was to encourage citizens to engage in prayer, which she said was inherently religious and therefore unconstitutional. But the good news is that just a few days ago, a federal court of appeals disagreed, reversed it by a 3-0 decision, and upheld the constitutionality of the National Day of Prayer.
Yeah, the good news indeed. And, our nation, the history is clear. Our nation has always been rooted in prayer. The first Constitutional Convention was centered around prayer. Our nation was built on prayer. And it's unfortunate that we have these kind of rogue judges like this that are carrying the mantle of atheist, anti-Christian, anti-prayer, anti-religion groups like the ACLU, People for the American Way, and in this case, the Freedom from Religion Federation, I believe is the name of the organization. But this is a tremendous victory, and once again, the First Amendment and freedom of religious expression and our nation's focus on prayer takes a step forward.
Yeah, this is the actual group called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, based in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a very anti-Christian organization. Now, the good news is that this ruling actually goes beyond just this particular situation, because it didn't rule per se on the merits of whether it's constitutional. It reversed Judge Crabb's decision on the basis that the Freedom from Religion Foundation had no standing, no right to bring the suit in the first place. Therefore, it vacated the decision, and it is as though there is no decision by Judge Crabb that existed. Now, even though it didn't rule on the merits that the National Day of Prayer is constitutional per se, the fact that it found that they didn't have standing goes far beyond the National Day of Prayer, because what happens is the ACLU and Freedom from Religion Foundation, they roam the country for religious expression or religious symbols like a seal that has a cross or a church in its city seal, or a cross on a water tower, or a 10 Commandments hanging on a courtroom wall, or Pledge of Allegiance, or in this particular case, the National Day of Prayer. And they say that we're offended by that. And just because they say we're offended by it, because they may drive through town and they happen to see it with their binoculars, then they file a lawsuit and they are allowed to come into court. The good news is that the court door has been slammed on this case, and it affects other cases around the country.
Well, Judge Frank Easterbrook, writing the decision for the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, he said this, quote, "Hurt feelings differ from legal injury." And we've said this a million times, that the First Amendment doesn't guarantee the right not to be offended, not to have your feelings hurt, just because they don't like the reality that our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And among those principles is the necessity as a nation to come together and pray. Just because they don't like that doesn't mean that they have standing to challenge that in court. And that's what this judge basically told them: take your hurt feelings and go home.
We've been advocating this more historic view of the right to find a reason to sue, standing is what it's called, for a long time. What happened was the Supreme Court years ago made an exception to the standing rules in every other area of law. Take, for example, an auto accident. You have to have an individual who's injured, and they have to sue an individual who injured them. So there's a direct connection between a real injury and a real person who injured them, and they have to be able to have some kind of remedy as a result of that lawsuit. But in the Establishment Clause cases, where it's a church-state issue, the Supreme Court gave an exception, and they basically said, well, if you're a taxpayer, just a mere taxpayer, you could perhaps have a standing. Or if you're simply offended by something, then you could have standing to sue. And so ridiculous things have happened where individuals that don't even live in a city, but they may drive through a city and they see a city seal on the side of a police car or a cross on a water tower or whatever it may be. They then file these lawsuits, and the courts have allowed them to waltz into court. They should have never had the opportunity to be in court in the first place. This case shuts the door on this. So not only is it a good ruling for the National Day of Prayer, it means that if they can't file suit on the National Day of Prayer because they don't have any real injury, they don't have standing, then they can't file suit when a president says, may God bless you and may God bless America, which they've done. They can't file suit when the president has a prayer or swears on the Bible during the inauguration. And they can't have a lawsuit when they just simply drive through and they see a Ten Commandments posted on a wall in some distant building.
Well, Judge Crabb, writing for the lower court, in her opinion, which was essentially overturned here due to the standing issue, she said that, quote, government involvement in prayer may be consistent with the Establishment Clause when the government's conduct serves a significant secular purpose and is not a, quote, call for religious action on the part of citizens. Where does she get that? We have had historically a president after president going all the way back to George Washington calling for national days of prayer, calling for the citizens to engage in prayer. There's no prohibition in the Constitution. This broad read of the Establishment Clause, which merely restricts the government from Congress specifically officially establishing a state religion, an official state religion, how far they have taken and skewed and twisted that. She's completely off base here. She's wrong, yet that's the meme we see these secularists pushing, unfortunately, even in our courts.
It's completely unrecognizable with respect to the First Amendment. I mean, this statement by Judge Crabb has nothing to do with the First Amendment, nothing to do with our history. It's just something that she invented out of pure thin air. But the problem is that when you don't hold judges to an original understanding and a historical view of the Constitution, whether it's the First Amendment or some statute, or some other part of the Constitution, then they just simply veer off course and they become a law unto themselves. Whatever they say becomes the law. And that's, in fact, what we've seen in this Establishment Clause cases. That's why it's been so far off course where everybody can just waltz into court, file a lawsuit. It's just absolutely frustrating that somebody says, oh, I'm offended. Well, you may be offended that you have to pay income tax. And we all came to this April 15 or April 18 day in 2011. But that doesn't give you a right simply because you're offended to file a lawsuit. You may be offended because of a government policy. It doesn't give you an automatic right to file suit. You may be offended at the clothes that your neighbor wears or the way they, the kind of car they drive. That doesn't give you a right to file suit. But yet if you're offended because you see a Ten Commandments or the National Day of Prayer, they've been allowed to come into court, file suit, and that's what has restructured the landscape by removing these religious symbols and these religious celebrations from our history.
Well, the First Amendment, unfortunately, in this modern, postmodern culture that we live in, has been replaced by political correctness. Political correctness rules the day, and there's free speech as long as that free speech or that freedom of expression does not violate the dictates of political correctness. And guess what? Political correctness is nowhere to be found in the United States Constitution. So Matt, I expect now the ACLU and the Freedom from Religion Foundation and others will throw in the towel, right? They're done. They'll quit.
Well, I'm sure that they'll ask the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case. Right. The Supreme Court needs to come down on the same side that this Federal Court of Appeals came down. I suspect, however, it will be a 5-4 decision, and I hope it goes the right way. Because with some of these new appointments at the Supreme Court, a number of these real controversial and important decisions have been splitting 5-4. We'll see what this particular case does. We'll follow it, and of course, if it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court Liberty Counsel, we'll file a brief because it's a very important legal issue. Go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information on our ministry. You can go to lc.org and also order this new book that I have called Take Back America. It is an updated, revised book of Take Back America. You can get that by going to the website at lc.org. Ask for Take Back America or call 1-800-671-1776. Be sure to sign up for our Liberty Alert and our Liberator newsletter right there on the website. And then also our Grassroots Activism email right there on the website as well at lc.org. And when you go to lc.org, also click on the Freedom Federation Network and become part of the network so you can begin to attend events and begin to mobilize people in your community. Just click on lc.org and hit the icon that says Freedom Federation.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.